Well, good morning. As we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful morning, indeed a beautiful morning, Tuesday morning, October 17th, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann, and a huge group of followers like yourselves out there that make it your business to enhance and fortify the concept of public access. And Fraser Dougherty passed away about a month ago at age 101
Mm.
and left a huge, wonderful, meaningful legacy that we all enjoy the fruits of this legacy. Um, and I enjoy the fruits of my effort by having my guest, Manny Vilar, is here with us this morning.
Hello,
And
good morning.
my favorite, to say the least, individual. And what I like really about you, before I'll let you even open your mouth, is your perseverance, your goodwill, good nature. Um, you don't fake it. It's just who you are during the interview,
Thank you.
after the interview, while you give a speech, while you run for office, and all of that. Consistency. I love that. So if it was up to me, I would give you the post without it even running for the post. but that's but that's but that's me. So hopefully we'll get to enjoy and to learn from interacting with Manny Villar this morning. So how are you doing, Manny? It's been a while.
I'm doing well. This is a campaign. We're running a lengthy race. We're getting out from West Hampton to Montauk, meeting people outside of my normal traditional, our normal traditional community out in Hampton Bays and West Hampton and Quogue and North Sea and Flanders. And it's been win, lose, or draw. I mean, I hope I win. I hope everybody votes for me. But win, lose, or draw, it's been a tremendous experience and met a lot of nice people and made some good friends along the way.
So you know what I always wonder. Of course, it's a public service and whatnot, but things has changed. You ran for offices. You have an experience of it, how it feels to run for an office and to make your case and to interact with people. How does this process changed along the years that you were involved in it?
So, I ran as you know, I ran a big police union. We were the fifth biggest police union in the state. We were an Albany level union. There's 11 state unions. I was president of one of those state unions. So I've had a tremendous amount of experience working on a bipartisan level within the state legislature and the state agencies. And all truth be told, I've dealt with every governor from Governor Pataki on up to the current governor, and their administrations and the cultures that change through the years. I've dealt with the state legislature when it was a Senate majority, uh, Republican Senate majority, Democratic majority, and when there was the bipartisan Independent Democratic Conference in a bipartisan majority with the Senate Republicans. So I've seen a lot of reiterations in either way. Getting out in the community and getting the opportunity to talk to people, what I do find is there's a lot of polarization. Um, and when I say polarization, people are taking issues from a national level and trying to apply it to a local level. And that's a mistake. You should bet, Tip O'Neill, famous Democrat, right? Speaker of Congress for many years, famously said, all politics are local. You should apply your level of politics based on the local level and your local
It's
issues.
easier said than done, you know.
Absolutely. I always uh, people joke, they say I'm like the king of analogies. My analogy to this is you should never root for a political party as if it's your favorite sports team. Your favorite sports team, sometimes the players are good, sometimes the players are not. But it's your favorite team. They're your hometown team. You're going to root for them,
No
good,
matter
bad,
what,
or
yeah, oh yeah,
indifferent.
oh yeah.
You shouldn't do that with
Rain or shine.
political Yeah, you shouldn't do that with political parties. You should look at the candidates, look at the experience they bring, uh, look at the amount of compassion and empathy they have for their community, and what do they want to do? If a candidate is sort of follows the Einstein theory, do the same thing and expect different
Yeah,
results.
yeah.
then you probably don't want to vote for that candidate.
Yeah.
You want to have someone that's coming in with new ideas, that's going to be, I use this term a lot, out of the box, is going to be looking at alternatives to a lot of our problems. Because, I learned early on, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I have one job when I walk in a room, is to find the smartest guy in the room, and then to get that person to work for me and with
Exactly, and
me
learn
to help
from,
me,
of
and
course.
for me to learn from them.
It's called humility,
Uh,
and
Absolutely.
and also, the extension of decency is portrayed through that kind of description that you just gave us. But I like your approach that is realistic but direct. You're kind of, what you see is what you get, even though it sounds cliche. What you see is what you get, but when it's the case, it's the case with you. So I just wonder, how can we make people aware of who you are as a person first, period. This is my point. Not less important than what is the agenda of the post that you're running for, which is important in itself. how do you how, what kind of effort you have in place to show people who you are as a person, first of all?
Well, we have social, obviously social media is big these days. You can go to social
It's like
media.
almost like saying, what do you want people to know about you,
Oh,
that you,
okay.
again, even though it's borderline cliche,
Yeah.
but still we need to go through it. We need to tell the people who's Manny Vilar.
Well, uh, married, six
Oh,
kids,
more than mine.
six
We
kids,
always said the five.
uh, two grandkids, one on the way in February. As a matter of fact,
Amazing.
today is my granddaughter Bria's birthday.
I love it.
She's going to be a big whopping 4 years old.
Oh my God.
Caretaker to my dad, who we were just talking about, Fraser Doherty. My dad was just turned 100.
I love it.
We affectionately call him the fish commander because he loves to fish. And on his actual 100th birthday, one of my grandsons and him, they went out fishing. They got a couple sea bass and a few porgies, and he was having a grand old time for his 100th birthday. Um, Career public servant. Been went on the New York State Park Police in 1984. Took a short break, ran for office in 1985. Was the last elected Bay Constable, along myself and Jeff Havlick. We were the two last elected Bay Constables in the state of New York. After that, the position became a civil service position.
Yes.
Did that for a short period of time, then went back to work for the state full time, and did that until the end of my career, which was on my 62nd birthday, this a year ago, uh, this past October. Um, During that time, I had a great career. I did 8 years as a cop here on Long Island. I took my first of several sergeant's promotion, and I spent 8 years in Harlem and the South Bronx.
I love it.
Yeah, did that. Spent a
Doesn't
little
get
time in.
tougher than that, huh?
No, wasn't any tougher than that. Yeah.
Oh
Spent
boy.
And it was all during the 90s. It was
Yeah,
92
I know, I
to
know.
2000, so it was a
Oh
tough
yeah, oh yeah.
was a tough time.
Yes.
Did Spent some time in Saratoga, Taconic. Came back to Long Island, um, and then moved up through the ranks, ultimately retiring as the senior sergeant in the state. And during that process, got involved on a union side of the house, um, which I came from a union household. My grandfather was one of the founding members of Local 780, United Cement Masons. My dad was a union shop steward and supervisor. Um, I got involved on a union side, was involved very deeply with an AFSCME AFL CIO union. Unfortunately, they sort of went awry. So we did a complicated union political maneuver. It's called a fragmentation and decertification. I led that effort, and we separated from AFSCME AFL CIO to form an independent police benevolent association. And overnight, we became the fifth biggest police union in the state of New York.
Amazing.
And I held that post until I retired last year. And I was the legislative chairman, so I was not only responsible for collective bargaining, uh, all labor relations, public relations. I was the CEO of this union. I was the
Yes.
president,
Yes.
as well as the chairman of the legislative committee, and then worked on a global with various PBAs on global legislation impacting police officers and their lives, and a multitude of social issues.
I love it. I mean, I'm exhausted just listening to the details, and I'm that kind of a person that would be like all over the place, in more than one place at the same time, which is a possibility, impossibility. And the Kabbalah is saying a lot about that. It's if you have a cluster of threatening thoughts, if you're capable to isolate one of them, then you're safe in that because nothing can enter it, which is a very interesting thing. But I'd like to before we get into the post that you're running for and all that, and the logic behind it, and the case behind it, and you and your opponent, and Long Island and whatnot, your relationship with your dad, is it what do you hear advice from him? Is he interested in telling your son, and and then follow with advice, or follow with you can always approach me and talk about things that you wonder about. I mean, what kind of a having a 100-year-old dad, and the heritage of his public service or service period, how does it kind of coexist?
So it's interesting. So my grandfather was very politically astute, like very politically astute, and was on top of politics, both here and in Europe. And, you got to remember, my grandfather was born in 1889, I think. And he passed in the 1980s, 1980 to be
So you
exact.
had the chance to, as
So
a
I
teenager,
had
almost to
I had the chance. I was actually in Europe because my grandfather, when he retired, he went back to Europe, to Portugal, and in 1974, I was actually in Europe when they overthrew the dictatorship that was running the country
That's amazing. So you
and
were
formed the
like
country.
a high
I
school
was in
then.
high school. I was a freshman in high
I
school.
love it. I
I
love
was
it.
there on summer vacation, and it was like, holy cow! What? There's a coup d'état that went on.
Oh my
Like,
god.
holy cow! So I actually lived through. I lived through that. Uh, uh, so it I'm sorry, it was a spring vacation when I was there. So did did that. My dad was a very traditional blue collar, what we would consider the John F. Kennedy kind of Democrat, um, throughout his life. Uh, Although much later in life, he felt that sadly, he felt that the Democratic Party had walked away from the working man. Was always what he would tell me. Um, and his concern was, you got a family, you got to make sure you raise your kids. He was very family and goal oriented in that sense, which I was an only child, and so only child with six kids of my own. Um, so it was great. And then my mom, who only passed just prior to the pandemic, um, was a tremendous influence. It was sort of like a real old school family. I built my house next door to my parents' house,
I love
because
it.
I
That's
had
good.
always thinking, hey, they get older, I gotta, it's
That's
not like
smart. That's smart.
we're not, I can't be a million miles away. I can't be, I got to be close, to be there if they ever need me to be their
That's a
caregiver.
thoughtful consideration, obviously.
Yeah, and it really ended up being the best decision in the world. My kids would get off the school bus, at my mom's house. My mom and dad's. She'd be making them bread and butter, and so it really was a very close, tight uh, family, nuclear family, with grandparents being very involved in the upbringing of my children. Um, and it was a great way. It was a great way to grow up, which pains me now because my own children can't afford to live in East Hampton.
Yeah,
And
I
my
know.
oldest son, like my granddaughter, today's her birthday. She's living in Wilmington, North Carolina,
Yes.
where my son has settled. And there, the trade off is he's living the life there that, and my grandchildren are living the life there that my son had lived
Yeah,
here
yes.
in the
Yes,
early
of course. Yeah,
1990s.
and I remember that because I've been here since 1983. So that's a whole issue in itself and all that. And we kind of the tragedy is that we have to accept it at face value, and there's not much really that we can do. Of course, the town can do as much as it can, but it's just a scratch on the surface in terms of how you improve that. But we're going back to politics, obviously. So to be a part of politics and to run the way you do. What initiated it at first? I mean, how do you find yourself at the doorstep of politics?
You, you know, like I said, I think a lot of it starts in a household for a lot of people. In my case, it was a grandfather who was a very politically astute man. He was in the Elks and the Kiwanis and, in various organizations. And he was just a very community oriented and very a politically astute man. He, grew up in Europe, so he did have a European sense of the world. And I will say this, that we as Americans, we don't have a depth of history that they do. And we talk in a sense of 20, 30, and 40 years, where they talk in sense of hundreds of years.
Yes, of course.
So they have a much different sort of political wherewithal and sense. And if you only have to look at European history, you realize what a I'm trying to think of a good word. I know what I want to say. What a mess it's been through the years. Leading right up till now. What's going
Yes.
on? What's
But we
going now?
managed to
God forbid,
compact
in
a lot
Israel.
of information, a lot of meaningful substance in a short time, as much as the European did in centuries. And the
Absolutely.
Constitution is obviously helping all that to
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
come
And if
together.
and for Americans, if we ever want to have a real sense of American history, you only need to speak to a Native American.
Yes.
You should take a ride. I would tell everyone, you should take a ride down to the Shinnecock Reservation, and you should talk to some of the elders there. They bring a tremendous amount of insight, and they view the world from a much different stance than we do,
Rightfully
and it
so,
makes you,
yeah.
and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And it helps bring a little humility to uh, our psyche of who we are as Americans, whether you came over on the Mayflower or you're here, you just recently came over. So it's a it, it's a my start in politics, having had that family background. Um, uh, I my dad my dad my was friends. They met Perry Duryea,
Oh.
of all people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, Through Perry, I got involved as a kid in his gubernatorial campaign when he ran for governor. Perry Duryea, we know from Montauk, was the
Yes.
last Republican speaker of the New York State Assembly. Got involved in his gubernatorial campaign and sort of just kept staying involved, staying involved, staying involved, staying involved. Got in a local volunteer fire department in Springs Fire Department in 1978, 79. Um, Bob Dortelman, who was the town assessor, elected town assessor, who was a great guy, sort of took me under my wing. My best friend's dad, Vic Schaefer, my best friend Al Schaefer, his dad, Vic Schaefer, was on the fire commissioners, and we had a had just got was very got very involved politically as we went through the years, and it really became the main thinking was, it wasn't politics for profit, it was politics for public service.
Yes.
You wanted to have public service. And
Yes.
that was the lesson I got from Bob Dorman. That was the lesson I got from Perry Duryea, Eddie Ecker, and a multitude of other, George Cafiso, multitude of other people from all back in the day, as well as my own family. If you're going to be involved, you're involved not because you're looking for a salary. You're involved because it's public service. You want to do the right thing. And that's what I carried on to being a volunteer firefighter, getting on the police department, and ultimately serving as a PBA representative.
Yes.
It's all public
Which
service.
is, it makes sense. You're almost like closing a circle in that sense. So going back to your running for these elections and all this, I mean, I would really, instead of me bothering you with questions, yeah, can you summarize for us what is the case that you? Even though I would have loved to have your opponent here, and I always say that I extend invitations to everyone, and doesn't matter how I feel, what I think. That's besides the fact. I'm who I am. I'm a pure public access individual. Been here for with this station for 37 years. So if anyone thinks for a second that I favor, so well, I favor, I love you as a person. So you know that. But can you give us and people out there just a summary of what it is that you want to present to the public? And as I said, I wish we could have had your opponent sitting right here next to you. That would have been great. But can you give us that kind of where you stand? What is it that you're trying to communicate with the people out there as far as that is concerned?
Sure. So, yeah, thank you. We and no question is a bother
Don't
or a
mind me
stupid
for
question or
drinking my
anything.
coffee.
I know I didn't get mine this
I know.
morning.
I'm so. Oh my God!
I was like,
They
oh my
could have
goodness.
made one for you in the kitchen.
Um,
Okay,
so
sorry.
uh, uh, so we have some real serious issues. And issues, the level of importance or how serious they are dependent on where you are in the social, economic position in life. Um, we are a victim of our own success. We've strided through years, and it's not a critique of one political party or another. We've strided through the years. We've built a tremendous second homeowner economy. But while in doing so, we paid very little. In other words, we our planners in the past um, did not foresee what that second homeowner economy would generate. And basically, what we have a second homeowner economy where individuals have a disposable income that is far, far greater than the main income of our local residents. And that's really the difference. And there's a tipping point where the imbalance becomes so great and it and that disposable income that's so higher than our
Yeah,
regular, that it starts to drive up the cost of services and goods and homes. The guy that's cutting lawn can cut my I could only afford $50 to cut a lawn,
you mean
but
prematurely?
prematurely, but he could cut a lawn for everything else. That's great for him, but not the people that work for him. So 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 there's been no investment in economic infrastructure to create an environment where we could grow businesses that would create those kinds of incomes to keep pace, or at least somewhat keep pace, with the disposable income of our second homeowners. So that in of itself has now created a problem. Now we get to a point, if there's no economic investment, and what is economic investment? Infrastructure. And we hear about it all the time. Every president from God knows how long to present, what do they always talk about? Infrastructure. We're going to invest in infrastructure. We're going to invest in infrastructure. Whether it was, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, you name it, Obama, Trump, Biden, everybody talks about infrastructure. Well, we've done very little investment in infrastructure. So traffic now is at an all-time worst. County Road 39 is a, a deterrent, actually, and detrimental to our community. Traffic is overflowing on the side roads. More and more people have to commute in because they're leaving the area and they've been going further and further and further west
West.
and coming back into work. And we're finding now a lot of places, talk to any business, I can't find help. I can't find help. I can't find help because they can't pay enough to attract individuals to come out here. So we need to invest in
So, what
infrastructure.
will serve as a wake up call in this case? Because obviously we've been talking about it so long, and obviously this summer was really really bad. I'm a house painter, so I know sometimes I would even skip giving estimates because it would be like I'm not going to travel something that it's supposed to take me 15 minutes. I would have to travel about an hour. Sometimes I don't even go there. This which is kind of unheard of. So, what would be a real wake up call for that, for example, to change or
Well,
to
I think the real wake up call, and we've had it. We've had these signs have been around for a while. Is the red tide, the brown tide? As we have more and more people and we've done more and more development without the investment in infrastructure, and septic management is an investment in infrastructure, right? What are we doing? We have more people than the ground is capable to filtrate septic. So so we didn't invest in sewers when we should have, because they would have been very cheap to have installed during the initial development in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s as town was growing. We only have to look at Whalebone Woods, right? They went in, they cut all those roads, put everybody on cesspools, right? That should have been all sewers right then and there. Several hundred homes. If you look at our lack of investment, it's now coming back to bite us in the rear end, where we have this septic infusion into our groundwater and our bays and
So,
harbors.
what was the thought leading to that you just described, that they didn't go for sewers? I mean, when
Bad planning. It's bad planning, and I know planners.
was it because they wanted to expedite the process and
No, I don't think it's bad plan. It's just bad planning. Planners that
because it's a
failed.
no-brainer. So how does one?
You would think, it. I'll take Springs as a great example. They plan Springs, half acres, uh, relatively, no, not 5 acre housing, relatively dense housing, no septic, no real business district per se. So the highest school taxes in East Hampton are in Springs. It's almost double everyone else because it's school district tax is completely borne by your property, your residential
Yeah,
property
yeah.
taxes,
Mhm.
and you have more homes, so you have more kids. And anybody should have said, gee, for every 10 homes, there's 6 kids. All right. So if I have a community with 100 homes, I'm going to have 60 kids. If I have a community with 1,000 homes, I'm going to have 6,000 kids. Whatever the number was, it was just bad planning from way back when to current day. It's still a lot of bad planning. They were talking about Hamlet studies and multi-dense prior to the pandemic, multi-dense housing uses. Then we had the pandemic, and the last thing we wanted to do was have people on top of one another, right? Nobody was talking about, even then, nobody was talking about sewers. So a lot of that was the wake up call. Um, and it all stems from that bad planning from back in the day and a failure to foresee things that were coming. And nobody's perfect. I'm not saying that people were remiss or they just didn't do their job. But the reality was, we now have the problem, right? So we know what the root cause was.
Yeah.
Now we need to fix the problem.
So how do we relate to it, especially when it comes to second homeowners, without hurting their feelings or without intruding into their rights or whatever it is? Because some people say, "Well, don't blame me for being wealthy or well-to-do or whatever it is." And you and I know that if we were to be really really wealthy, we will live the kind of life that they live, and we will indirectly contribute to the reality that you just described. So how do we resolve it in being politically correct, so to speak?
So the second, in the end of the day, the second homeowners are not the problem, right? Like I said, it was a planning problem, and the second homeowners, just like the year-round homeowners, they want clean harbors, they want clean bays, they don't want traffic, they want low taxes, they want good drinking water, they want to have enjoy the community just as much as everyone else. So we need to engage. We need to engage everybody. We need to start thinking outside of the box. There's an unfortunate, it's just human nature, but I always say it's the Robert Moses view of the world. I'll build the highways and people will come, but I don't plan anything on the side, right? I don't plan any of the collateral. So we need to take a step back and say, okay, so we're past that stage, but we can't fall into that same kind of tunnel vision, myopic view of the world. We can't say, well, the only solutions are no, just because in our little sphere, the only solutions are. There may be other solutions, and that's the out of the box thinking. What do they do in the Netherlands? What do they do with septic in the Netherlands where they're 5 feet below sea level? What do they do? What do they do in Louisiana? What do they do on the Cape, Martha's Vineyard, Virginia Beach, Myrtle Beach? What do they do in these communities? What do they do in the desert? What do they do in Israel? There's an oceanfront community, or a Mediterranean front community.
Yeah.
What do they do? So let's look at alternatives and see what they're doing. I very fortunate. I talked earlier about my grandfather. I and ultimately inherited a home. So I have a home in Europe, in Portugal, on the coast, not on the water itself, but like East Hampton. It's the area where my family was from, um, and they've been there since the 1300s. So I've inherited his home. The original part of the house was built in the very late 1400s, early 1500s.
I love it.
I really don't know when exactly. The walls in the house are
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
2 feet thick. The original part of the house. Um, so it's in a very agricultural, farming, fishing community. So here's a house that's 600 years old. It has underground electric, water, sewage, and gas.
I love it.
600-year-old house
Yeah,
in a rural farming community.
yeah.
We need to explore what's done elsewhere. We got to look at every problem, right? Three parts to a problem. The solution to a problem, there's always three parts.
Yeah. This is the
There's
army
the
view.
there's
I
the
come.
immediate. What do you do immediately? Then there's the short term, and then the long term. So we should be looking at the long term fix. We know we have to do something right away. When we talk about septic, that is our AI systems, right? We need to get those in place. The Clean Water Bond Act, even though it had a lot of deficiencies, was good for AI, bad for sewers. We need to implement that. We need to go back to the legislature. We need to access the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. It's a federal fund. There's I think over $2 billion in that fund. We have not accessed that. We need to look to access that, and there's requirements to go along with it, which is my guess why getting everyone to agree to the requirements is probably difficult. But we need to access those funds, and we need to have a serious investment in our infrastructure. This is a long-term fix. I hate to say it this way, but it's probably not for my lifetime and your lifetime, but we need to lay the foundation now so
Yes.
future generations will have a chance. My kids, your kids, our kids will have a chance of affordability to earn a good paying job in a clean, safe environment, both economically and environmentally.
And you know what? Before I will ask you to summarize maybe what your opponent is thinking of, I would. Well, I want to go back to the traffic issues because this is make it or break it issue. It's almost like I'd like to think that people should have, as much as they have a second home, they should have a second car and take the public transportation. And when they arrive here, they use their cars here. So that will solve some kind of a. But other than that, I really don't see a solution for this. On the contrary, I see things getting much worse, where it's going to get us to a point where people would just don't lose desire to even come here anymore because it's so torturous. I mean, this summer, out of the 40 years that I'm here, I really witnessed this kind of a level of misery caused by traffic that it really influenced me psychologically. I was like, and I'm accustomed to it. I have a thick skin. I know the back roads. I know the layout. I know the ins and outs. But like you say, it just spreads off to the side roads and the back roads and the back roads. You cannot call back roads anymore.
That's right.
They're main roads slash backwards, wishful thinking kind of thing. So I don't see really a solution. I mean, I see maybe there's a solution, but it takes so much planning and so much innovation to reach any kind of solution that people don't even go there, they don't even attempt. They want to run the system down to where it just comes to a standing halt. So again, I don't see how we proceed from this point, from this kind of dead end.
So
And you must agree with me. There's a certain degree of dead end into it all.
so there here here in the reality is, like I said, is think out of the box. We should be thinking in the East End Transportation Authority taking over the assets of the MTA. I've spoken to various our county controller. I've spoken to our county exec candidate Ed Remain, and I've spoken to already to officials in Albany about what we have to do. I've actually started drafting that legislation. So we should be thinking about an East End Transportation Authority. East End Transportation Authority. We talk about Long Island Railroad, right? One track, in and out. There's barely any rail service. When you think of the amount of money we've paid to the MTA, great for New York City, and we probably could have had 4 or 5 tracks laid with the amount of money we paid in. So we should be keeping that money here on the East End, influencing, because we only need to get to the hubs. We only need to get as far as Ronkonkoma. We only need to get as far as Spionk, or just a little further west. That's all we need. We You can always transfer trains, where trains travel to every hour on the hour because of that community. So we don't need, big long trains that are going to go from Montauk to New York City. We only got to get to those transportation hubs, and then you swap trains and away you go. I've traveled Europe on trains. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's easy to do. A transportation authority would also develop affordable workspaces close to rail hubs so that workers, we always marvel about in New York City how all these construction workers and all these people get on the train and they take the train into work in New York City. Well, you can't do that here because there's no affordable workspace. Workmen need a workspace so they can keep their vans, their equipment, their supplies. We need affordable workspace. That goes along with affordable housing. And a transportation authority could all be involved in that and helping to create that. Then, when we actually go to the road, County Road 39, we need a complete redesign. I worked for the State Park Police, right? 38 years. I'm used to traffic circles. The interchange between the Wantagh Parkway and Ocean Parkway at Jones Beach handles something at peak time, something like 250,000 cars an hour. Now, we don't need a Jones Beach kind of rotary at
Of
our
course, no,
intersection,
no, but it's a
but
good example,
we
you
need
know.
rotaries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I've been to Europe many times. Um, very few traffic lights, traffic rotaries everywhere. It's always a traffic rotary. So we need a complete redesign. We need to widen the road so it's a legitimate road. The last improvements were 2008. They didn't make the road wide enough because they tried to cram the road in the existing footprint. So we need to, where we can, and there's got to be spots where we can. It is what it is. But we need to have a real full assessment, complete redesign of County Road 39, because the days of building a highway bypass are gone. That land is no longer available, and it's no longer affordable. It's no longer, would be billions and billions of
But
dollars.
let's just say that the plan, or the plans are in place, which you beautifully described it just now, and we accept it and we want to actualize it. But we have a reality where, for example, the circle where 114 and Buell Lane and what is it, Toilsome Lane,
That's all.
meet, took forever. I mean, you know, you think I don't want to put anyone down, and I don't want to belittle anyone or any effort, of course. But I know because I am on the roads for this reason or that all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, I drive at least between 100 and 150 miles every day here at the East End. That's crazy. So I keep on asking myself, where's the deficiency? There is obviously one. Where does it come from? The drainage project on the Stephen Hans path that they just long overdue, took forever, and it took them forever to actualize it once the work started. Now again, I don't want to belittle anyone, and I don't want to accuse anyone. I just want to kind of state the facts. Say so. Even if we have the plans, how do we bring the proper attitude so once you start a job, you really finish it in a timely fashion? If me as a house painter get all the work in the world, and I say I'm going to deliver it in 3 weeks, weather permitting, and then 6 weeks later, I mean, obviously I'm not going to have a business. I'm not going to survive. So, what do we suffer from that this is the case? That you start a job and it just takes forever.
You know, again, I think in government, the problem in government is there's a lack of urgency. Everybody likes to kick the can down the road. Um, the project on Stephen Hans Path, I think they built the Verrazano Bridge faster than they did
I
that
know.
project. I mean, I
Thank
just,
you for
I,
agreeing with
I,
me. Oh my
I,
God. Oh
I
my.
marveled at the length, at the amount of time that took. But a lot of that is in how the job's bid. It's how the agreement is made. Some of it has to do with the different parties involved. you know, remember what I said earlier? You got to go in a room. You can't think you're the smartest guy in the room. You got to find the smartest people in the room and then convince them that they have to help you. And I think we have a lot of chiefs, not enough Indians. There's not enough elected officials that are prepared to roll up their sleeves to get out and do the advocacy. Do the advocacy. Um, to take that ride up to DEC or DOT or Ag and Markets or any of the other Department of Education or any of the other agencies. And I'll throw kudos out in Riverhead, Yvette Aguilera, right? She was the Riverhead town supervisor. She's not running for reelection this year. Now I'm in Albany. I'm there because that's my job, to be there to represent my members. I would see her there constantly. I would see members of the Suffolk County legislature in Albany, Republican members of the legislature. I would see other town officials, Angie Carpenter, Ed Smith, Ed Romaine. I would see these individuals. Never once did I see an elected official from East Hampton town. A lot of people you didn't see. So it's about
what does that say? I want you to
well,
just
it's
give me
about
a clue of what does it mean, even though it's kind of obvious. But still,
it's engagement. It's about engagement. You can sit back, issue all the edicts that you like, and say all the things that you're doing. But the proof is in the pudding. If the job gets done and gets done in efficient and timely fashion, then you know that they're doing their job. If you talk about a project and it takes years and years and years to get off the ground, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong at the top where these initiatives, these policies are being made. On a town level, you look at the senior citizen center, right? You look at the immediate care center. I mean, that's been going on for years. It's finally doing construction. Look at the Springs Fire Department and emergency communications in Springs. God forbid.
That is
that's
like,
going on since early 2000,
that's an issue in itself. That's so frustrating. It's not even funny.
You look at all these issues on the town level that just don't get done, or they get done eons, eons after after there was a proposal or a thought or a plan or it was suggested or it was an identified need. And the same goes through on the county level and on the state level. We look on the county level, we only have to look at the current administration and the hacking that occurred. The county was advised by an insurance agency that their network, their IT, is wholly deficient and it needs to be upgraded. And it would have cost several $1,000,000. County didn't do it. They got hacked. Now they've spent upwards of $18 million and the clock is still ticking. They'll be dealing with this hacking and trying to straighten out the IT system and hardening the system for another several years. So for a couple million, and had they been expeditious, they could have done it.
That's called complacency. and also, I can give you the example of School Street in Springs Fireplace Road and Gardeners Avenue.
Yeah.
That drainage problem, they fixed it.
Right.
Did you see how they fixed it?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's worse.
Yeah, it's worse.
It's like, I don't know.
It's actually gotten worse.
So I don't. So I don't get. Again, I'm the last one to sit here and to preach or to But I mean, there's just basic stuff of trying to go to the friggin' deli. And sometimes I reconsider my actions. I say maybe I should stay home and make my egg sandwich at home and not even travel out. But I don't know if it's complacency. I don't know if it's just taking things for granted. I don't know if it's just code of conduct. But it should bother those that we complain about. Even they're a part of the system. Don't they suffer from the same things that we suffer?
You would think.
Doesn't it affect them and all that? So I don't know. So maybe we're in a great need for a unit that will, like a higher unit, that will call it as it is and roll their sleeves themselves in order to show this is the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't think that the town employees are lazy. By far not. I think they're hardworking individuals they're professionals. They know what they're doing. So again, there's it's got to be attacked or addressed from more than one direction.
So I one of the things as a public employee myself, and I'm a huge advocate for public employees and the abilities of public employees and what they can do and bring to the table. There has been for years a movement afoot to downsize government. You've heard the term. We want to right size government. And when they say right size government, there's this connotation that it means to reduce the size of government. Governor Andrew Cuomo was famous for that. They've so reduced the state workforce that things take longer and longer. They've reduced the state workforce by like 20 or 30% statewide. Now, this this is why when you file for an application with the state of New York, things take forever because there's not enough state employees. The town of East Hampton, particularly county of East Hampton, I think the highway department is down to 8 employees. Last time the highway department had 8 employees, I think was in the 1960s or 1970s. We have hundreds of miles of road
So
now.
what is the rationale behind it? I don't get it
Well,
again.
it's you have a pot of money, and you're trying not to. There's a term for it, and the state uses this all the time. They use this in contract negotiations. Revenue neutral. All negotiations need the revenue neutral. So, if you increase the pay and benefits, then you need to decrease the amount of employees. And this is what's been going on on a state level, on a county level, on a town level, and it's
So
been going on for years.
Service deficiencies.
Absolutely. So the way to fix this is what we need to do is we need to bring our public employees into proper salaries that are competitive with private industry. We then need to hire sufficient employees, stop using outside vendors, stop using outside contractors. We need to bring our these services back in-house where our public employees can do them better, more efficiently, and have that other special, that one thing that's so critical to public employees. It's in their community, and they're vested to see the job done correctly and
That's
job
a great
right
point.
because they live it every day. So, hiring an outside contractor from Up Island, upstate, out of state, New Jersey, whatever, like I'll give you a great example. We right now use this town uses this outfit called Cityscape. I think they're based out of Florida.
Yeah.
And this is what they do. Oh, they when a permit process, they got to do this, got to do that. They ask for all sorts of stuff. The Cityscape is not invested in our
Of
community.
course.
You know what?
Like they
Our
say,
local
drive like your kids live here.
drive
Signs
like
that
your
it gets,
kids live
yeah,
here.
yeah.
But we don't have the town employees and the resources to do what this company does. So they got to fund out. We should have those resources. All that should be done in house. When I started with the state, and I started with state parks, right? State Park Police. Back then, they had huge building, carpenter shop. The state actually made its own furniture. In a lot
I
of
love
instances,
that.
they made its own furniture. They had their own painters. They had their own services. That carpenter shop when I started,
Self-sufficient.
this was the Long Island State Park Commission. They had a maintenance barn. There were several hundred what we can consider blue collar jobs, professional carpenters, plumbers, electricians, several hundred of them taking care of Long Island State Parks. Now they're down to under 100, and they're contracting out for all these state parks. You only have to look at the deterioration of the structures in state parks to see what happened. Well, you eliminated the workforce, you went to outside vendors, and now you're paying top dollar when you
At
could
the
have done
mercy
it
of
in-house.
strangers almost,
Right.
so it's not like
And
in-home.
the town, all the same way. And this has been a trend in government that unions,
Is that inevitable? Is that a part of the inevitability of what the future installs for us in terms of, I don't know if I should call it progress, but it's kind of a certain attitude that the future is um, uh, um, introducing to us, and that we have to kind of keep up with some. It's like a trend, and it's an old fashioned to have your own crew to does all the work for you and all that. So it's
I believe if we keep electing individuals that are are ideologues that are rooted in ideology, that are not dedicated to public service. Like I get, like you said, hey, we go to the deli when it rains. I don't go down Spring Fireplace Road.
Yeah,
You know, I go down through Harbor.
yeah.
You know, right? If we keep electing
And even
people,
there, it's
even there
questionable.
it's questionable. If we keep electing individuals that are chasing national ideological theories and policies and trying to implement that on a local level instead of taking care of Mrs. Murphy's problem with her intersection when she calls and said there's constantly a problem because the intersection floods, then we're getting too far away from what we're elected to do, which is public service. I'm here and I would be elected public service. So what you'll find, and here's a great example. I hand out my palm cards, right? We have these palm cards. On the bottom of the palm cards, my cell phone number. Call me.
I
I'll
love it.
tell you right on the air.
Yeah,
It's 631-324-0528.
that's it.
0528.
That's it.
Call me, text me. I'm happy to hear. Hey, I'm happy to hear because it's about public service, constituent service. It's about getting out in the field and understanding, going to those local delis in the morning to get your cup of coffee. Hey, what do you think about this? Or sometimes when you're standing there waiting, listening to what everybody else is talking about, and then asking,
And
hey, hey, you happen to be, you brought up this issue. I wasn't aware of this. What's going on? When I first started this race, I got a phone call right away. Someone in Hampton Bays. There's a old abandoned motel, and the town was going to sell it to a developer, and it's right on a cove, like right there. Was going to sell it to, and there's no sewers, so it would be septic systems. Even would be the AIA systems, the new systems. But instead of, it never should have been a structure there in the first place, and the town was dead set on doing this. So you had Rick Martell and Cindy McNamara. Cindy's running for supervisor. Rick Martell's running for reelection. Um, they were like, "No, Jay, we can't do this. We can't do this." So I got called. I went down there. I really didn't know anything about the issue, so I went down. I asked a lot of questions, and I came out immediately in favor of the Hampton-based community and said, "No, you can't. No, this makes absolutely no sense. It's literally feet from the water,
yeah,
and we're going to build more structures here. Let's knock this down. They want to park. Give them the passive use park with the kayak launching ramp. It makes
yes,
absolutely good sense.
yeah,
Every sense in the world. But yet the administration was pushing to give it to developers to develop this land. And the
yeah,
town, and the crazy part is, the town bought the land and was going to resell the land. It made
yeah.
absolutely no
If you
sense.
buy, you buy to keep and to
Right.
preserve and
That's
all that.
the not being engaged with the
So the
community and not listening.
so the challenging aspect of it all is that even if you were to be elected, there's always someone above you that you need to not only convince to have a wishful thinking that indeed he's in sync with you. There's always someone above you that maybe is not in sync with you, and then it's almost makes your effort twice as much in order to achieve the same thing. So it's like the whole system needs to be educated at the same as the motion forward is moving forward. So it's and your intention is not to stop it to think or to pause, but to think on the go and all this. And so that's what makes it tricky. That's what makes it unlikely to happen. Or if it was to happen, you wouldn't. It would be such small increments of achievements and progress. They don't won't even feel like something is being done and all this. So how do you feel about you alone cannot save the world?
So it's so.
And by the way, before we continue, let me just, because we have only 5 minutes, believe it or not, we've been 52 minutes on the air.
Oh wow.
Let me just mention that Manny Vilar is here with us on Tuesday morning, October 17th, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi. So please, how is it that you think you can save the world on your own?
So One of the things I got to do was draft legislation in Albany and then work it through the system. So subsequently, when I retired, I started a company, Acabonic Strategies, where government relations, advocacy, for a lack of other terms, a lobbyist. So one of the things we do is you engage the legislators. So in my case, I had 213 legislators, Montauk to Buffalo. The guy in Buffalo does not know what the issues are, would know what the issues are here. But you have to educate them. And the recent uh, uh, bill that's out there, that AI bill, the problem is that bill, it was drafted by Fred Thiel, excellent piece of legislation, but it's geared towards the East End. Well, everybody wants clean water, so it passed. Everybody's fine. The problem is it didn't address a lot of the issues on the west end of the county. So the bill was deficient in that sense that it was good for one part, really not so good for another part.
But is it
So
that the concept itself and not necessarily locations?
well, no, it's the concept is good.
Yeah,
It's just the way the allotment of the funding with 75% for IA systems,
got it, got
25%
it,
for sewers, and administrative costs. So, you
got it.
know, but doing, something like that is going in and being a hard advocate for your legislation and convincing people. I would pass bills in the state legislature, pension bills, 50, $60 million pension bills that impacted my members, and I would get it through the legislature, either unanimously or with like one no vote. And the one no vote was a Republican, but that was neither here nor there. And you build sponsors and you build consensus. So anything is possible. You have you engage your community. It's all about advocacy. You know, Advocacy got a bad name when they turned it into community organizing, because it's not community organizing, it's advocacy. And you're getting your community and you're getting people together and you're advocating, and then you're working on a bipartisan level at all levels of government, depending federal, state, county, town, village, to engage people. It's a lot of work. It doesn't happen like that. And it doesn't happen because, hey, I have a good idea. You got to convince people it's a good idea. You got to convince people that your funding, the fundings that you need, is more important than the funding that someone else's need. And if you don't engage and you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and put the effort and the time in and make those phone calls and pay those visits, you're not going to get it done.
Yes, it's called One Voice, and I can't say that. First of all, I wanted to, because we're almost concluding here. Uh, how happy I am to sit across from you. It's long overdue. I think the last interview we had was like
Yeah.
9 years ago, something like that. I must reveal that I always liked you. I always thought the world of you. So I'm not even speaking politics. I want to wish you luck, first of all, because I want to wish you luck, because you're a good man, and I think that we will benefit in more ways than one, in more ways than we know, if and when you're going to be elected. And I know that even if you won't be elected, even if you won't be elected, you will still won't be deterred, and you have your own way of contributing to our community. So let me just say that we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday, and as much as we're here this morning, October 17th, 2023. And thank you to my guest, Manny Vilar. Manny, I'm going to give you the last word.
Uh, I cannot thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to come in and speak to the community. I cannot thank this community for, a local kid made it to the highest levels of state government. I could not have done it with everybody in the community, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, Mr. and Mrs. Bach, Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer, Mr. and Mrs. Dortelman, and countless others that are all part of my childhood, that enabled me, along with my parents, to reach the levels of success that I've reached. Uh, um, it's my opportunity now that I've retired finally after
Yeah, there
38
you
years.
go.
This is actually my opportunity to give back to the community. And I hope the community, I hope everyone comes out on election day. Early voting starts October 28th. And I appreciate everybody's vote. And I just want to say thank you. And last but the least, on a happy note, happy birthday to my forth my granddaughter, who's going to be 4, Bria, today.
And happy birthday to your dad.
And happy birthday to my dad.
Okay, good. And by the way, I want to mention that I invite anyone to come, and obviously, so this is not exclusive to one individual or another. Uh, Keep up the good spirits.
Okay, thank you.